Marcus Delgado pulled the brim of his old baseball hat low, shielding the face that had once graced the covers of business magazines celebrating the rise of a young Latino entrepreneur. He stepped out of his weathered, silver Honda Civic, a car he'd kept since his college days, as a humble reminder of where he started. Now, that same car looked out of place, parked among glossy SUVs and delivery trucks in the bustling East Side lot. But Marcus didn't care. Today he wasn't arriving as the celebrated owner of a 12-location taco empire. He came as a man looking for answers. And sometimes, to uncover the truth, you have to become invisible. The late afternoon sun blazed against the cracked pavement as Marcus approached location number 7, a store that had haunted him for weeks. The numbers in his financial reports had become a source of sleepless nights. Ingredient costs up 30%, a surge in customer complaints, and vague, unexplained expenses that had even made his seasoned accountant raise an eyebrow. But what hit hardest were the reviews, those raw, scathing online remarks that cut deeper than he'd ever admit. "The food's disgusting, something slimy and green in my taco, definitely not guac. Used to be my favorite place, now it tastes like reheated leftovers." The owner clearly doesn't care about quality anymore. Marcus had read each one more than once. That last comment in particular had stayed with him. It wasn't just a critique, it was a wound, a direct strike against the very legacy he had dedicated his life to preserving. He wasn't just a businessman. He was the keeper of something sacred, his grandmother Abuela Rosa's legacy. A legacy that began with a small taco cart on the corner of 5th and Main. Every tortilla had been hand-pressed. Every ingredient thoughtfully sourced from trusted suppliers. Every bite was meant to carry the spirit of tradition, of family, of love. It wasn't just food, it was storytelling in flavor form. And yet, here he was, standing in front of store number 7, dressed in a plain white tee, worn jeans, and scuffed work boots. He looked nothing like a CEO. But in that moment, Marcus felt more like a stranger than a leader, an outsider peering into something that had once been his. From the outside, the restaurant still looked presentable. The signature red and yellow awning was spotless. The windows gleamed. Even the grand opening banner from 2019 still flapped proudly in the breeze, like a cheerful mask hiding something rotten underneath. Marcus couldn't explain the feeling with logic, but his instincts, those same gut feelings that had once told him where to set up his first cart and what spices would keep customers coming back, were now screaming a warning. Something was deeply wrong here. The air itself felt heavier, like the room before a storm, like betrayal floating beneath the surface. He pushed through the glass doors at the height of the lunch rush. The familiar aroma of cumin and fresh cilantro hit him, but instead of comforting him, it made his stomach turn. There was something stale, almost rancid, hidden beneath the familiar scent. A subtle decay that didn't belong anywhere near a place that bore his family's name. Inside, the restaurant buzzed with energy. Construction workers grabbed quick meals. Office employees chatted quietly over their trays. Children pointed excitedly at the colorful murals of traditional Mexican festivals. It all looked right, but Marcus wasn't looking. He was listening. He melted into the line, head down, ears open, not just hearing but feeling every word around him. His heart, once his compass for business decisions, now picked up on the unspoken doubts hanging in the air. "I used to come here every Tuesday," an elderly woman whispered to her friend. "But last time, my carnitas tasted off, like they'd been sitting too long." "Yeah," her friend replied, disappointment in her tone. "My son got sick last time he ate here, spent all night hugging the toilet." Each sentence landed like a blow to Marcus's chest. These weren't strangers. They were his neighbors, his community, people who had grown up alongside his brand, who once believed in the Delgado name the way he believed in his grandmother's hands kneading masa. His fists clenched inside his pockets. He pulled his cap even lower, as if that could hide the rising storm of grief and fury inside him. Behind the counter, the staff moved with robotic precision, quick, efficient, but empty. No passion, no love, just clockwork. And that's when Marcus understood. He was no longer the proud founder of a family legacy. He was the final guardian of a crumbling kingdom. And that kingdom was rotting from the inside out. His eyes scanned the familiar faces behind the prep line. Employees he vaguely remembered from hiring spreadsheets, but had never truly met. He had stepped back from daily operations long ago, trusting the system he built, the managers he appointed. Perhaps, he thought, that trust had been his greatest flaw, delegating too much, believing that loyalty didn't need to be earned continually. Maria, the cashier, couldn't have been older than 22. Her eyes were soft but ringed with fatigue, her smile forced. Each movement of hers, from entering orders to handing out receipts, was mechanical, hollow. She looked like someone who had once been proud to wear the Delgado shirt and had since forgotten why. In the kitchen behind her, the line bustled with a chaotic rhythm. Marcus had seen enough kitchens to know when something was off, and this one? It didn't hum with purpose, it crackled with tension. Benny saw him. At the time, the prep cook, name gleaming on his tag, moved with a curious combination of precision and secrecy. He built each taco by stacking ingredients in a way that blocked the view from the counter. Subtle, almost clever. His hand paused, barely noticeable, as he reached for the lettuce. A second of hesitation, then a darting glance toward the walk-in cooler. Marcus's gut twisted. There was something being hidden here, something more than just food quality, and Marcus was done waiting for spreadsheets to tell him the truth. When his turn came, he lifted his gaze and met Maria's tired eyes. "Hey there," he said gently. "Just a classic beef taco, nothing fancy." The simplicity of the request was intentional. The classic beef taco was the beating heart of his brand. If there were any shortcuts, any betrayals of the original recipe, they would be exposed here, or to go, or for here. As Maria processed the order, Marcus never took his eyes off the kitchen. Tony moved quickly, almost too quickly. He grabbed a fresh tortilla, added the beef seared just right, topped it with melted cheese and perfectly diced tomatoes. On the surface, it was flawless, a textbook performance. But then it happened. Tony reached for the lettuce container. With deliberate ease, his hand skimmed the top. Not once did he dig deeper. No misdirection, no sleight of hand. Marcus held his breath, scanning every movement. For a moment, he thought he'd been wrong, that maybe his paranoia had clouded his judgment. But then, just for a second, Tony's hand dipped, a subtle dive beneath the visible top layer. He emerged with a handful of lettuce that looked a little darker, slightly limp. Off. And in that moment, Marcus felt his chest tighten. This wasn't paranoia, it wasn't speculation. It was the beginning of a truth that would unravel everything. Tony reached into the large bin of lettuce. The top layer was fresh, crisp, vibrant, a lush green that shimmered under the heat lamps. It was the perfect disguise, but his hand didn't stop there. In one quick, practiced motion, so subtle it would be invisible to most, he dug deeper, pulling out a handful of darker, soggier leaves. It was like watching someone scoop decay straight from a moldy underworld hidden beneath a garden paradise. Marcus held his breath, forcing his face into a mask of calm. He paid cash, took his order number, 47, and found a seat with a clear view of the kitchen. When the food arrived, it looked flawless, bright, balanced colors, an inviting aroma, sprigs of cilantro arranged like edible confetti, and a lime wedge placed just so. It was the kind of meal you'd see on a billboard. He took the first bite. The familiar spices, cumin, paprika, the secret touch of cinnamon his grandmother had used, soothed him for a moment. Each flavor opened the door to a warm memory. He almost believed he had overreacted, until he reached the lettuce. Immediately, the texture gave it away. There was no satisfying crunch, no crisp bite. Instead, it was limp, damp, bitter in a way that lingered like regret. It felt like biting into a decaying version of his past. He forced himself to swallow, even as his body recoiled. His hands trembled as he peeled back the layers of the taco, like a crime scene investigator uncovering a carefully buried truth. And there it was, raw and undeniable. Beneath the pristine top layer was a bed of rotting lettuce, brown leaves, slimy edges, some dotted with black spots, others disintegrating into their own moisture. A sickly sweet, sour smell rose up, flooding his senses. But the worst part wasn't the rot. It was the intent. The fresh layer wasn't an accident. It had been placed there, deliberately, like a coat of makeup hiding infection. Someone had decided this was good enough. Marcus felt something crack inside his chest. Not just rage, though it burned hot and fast, but heartbreak. Betrayal. A sense of loss so deep it didn't have a name. The legacy he had built with his grandmother's hands, with the soul of his family, was being desecrated by people who had no right to touch it. He looked around. Families were eating, laughing, unaware. Construction workers scarfed down meals, believing they were fueling themselves for a long afternoon. The elderly couple from before, who might never return after their last bad experience, sat quietly. This wasn't about food costs or quality anymore. This was about ethics, about the betrayal of trust between a restaurant and its customers, between the name Delgado and the community that had supported it for over a decade. Marcus's expression hardened. He stood up, half-eaten taco still in hand. The time for silent observation was over. If they wanted to gamble with his name, his customers' health, the memory of the woman who taught him to cook, then fine, game on. But first, everyone who had participated in this betrayal would face consequences. Marcus Delgado hadn't built a 12-store empire from scratch just to be destroyed from the inside out. And those who had mistaken his silence for weakness were about to learn just how wrong they were. The kitchen door loomed before him like a portal. Each step toward it felt like carrying the weight of everything he'd built, and everything now at risk. Behind him, the restaurant buzzed with lunchtime chaos. No one knew that an earthquake was about to erupt. But Marcus knew. He stared through the small glass window in the kitchen door, watching Tony continue the same deceitful routine, layering fresh ingredients over rot, wrapping betrayal in tortillas. Not anymore. Marcus gripped the door handle, knuckles tight, his resolve turning cold and sharp. It was time everyone remembered who really ran this place, and what happens when you poison a Delgado legacy. Every piece of rotting lettuce was a knife in the honor of his family. The door slammed open, crashing against the stainless steel counter with a metallic bang that cut through the kitchen like a gunshot. Everything froze. Spatulas stopped mid-air. Conversations died in the throat. Marcus stepped inside, the taco in his hand now a piece of undeniable evidence. The air went heavy, dense with the gravity of a truth about to be exposed. "You can't be in here," stammered Jorge, a young line cook, voice trembling. "I need permission?" Marcus asked, voice low and dangerous. He raised the taco, peeled back the tortilla to reveal the brown, wilted lettuce underneath. Like a crime laid bare. Jorge paled. His eyes darted to Tony, who stood frozen, a clump of lettuce still in his gloved hand, damp and suspicious. "I don't know what you think you saw," Tony began, adopting the tone of a man used to talking his way out of trouble. What I think I saw, Marcus interrupted, his voice like ice. He walked further into the kitchen, every step calm, deliberate, commanding. He didn't need to raise his voice. He was the voice. Maria had just reached the kitchen door, perhaps to apologize for the interruption. But when she saw his face clearly under the fluorescent lights, her hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God, Mr. Delgado." The name dropped into the room like a bomb. Jorge dropped his spatula. Prep cooks froze, hands suspended over containers. Even the dishwasher turned off the sink. Only Tony remained unmoved, his posture defiant, his stare sharp. "Well, well," Tony sneered, slipping off his gloves with exaggerated calm. "The legendary Mr. Delgado finally shows his face? 2 years away, and now you remember the kitchen exists?" "Cut the attitude," Marcus snapped. "Explain this." He raised the taco again, like an indictment. "Explain why you're serving rotten lettuce, why you're hiding it under fresh greens, why you're destroying everything I've built." The kitchen became a courtroom, and the taco was Exhibit A. The employees watched in stunned silence. "Your customers?" Tony laughed, a bitter edge in his voice. "They don't care about quality. They want fast and cheap. You think they know the difference between 3-day-old lettuce and freshly chopped? They're gone in 5 minutes. And so you serve them garbage?" "I call it reality," Tony said, throwing his arms wide. "You want truth? Your ingredients, your grandmother's recipes, they're nice, but they don't pay the bills. I found a way to keep this place profitable." Vein throbbed at Marcus's temple. "Profitable? You call poisoning customers a business model?" "I call survival a strategy," Tony shot back. "While you're in some office counting revenue from 12 locations, we're here fighting to stay open." The room pulsed with tension. Some employees now realized the full scope of what was happening. Guilt flickered in their eyes. Others looked stunned, like a conspiracy had just revealed itself. "How many people know about this?" Marcus growled. No one answered. Jorge stared at the floor. The prep staff focused intently on the tomatoes. Even Maria looked away. "I said, who else is involved?" Tony raised his voice. "No one says a word without a lawyer." The threat hung in the air. It almost made Marcus laugh. Instead, he walked over to the prep station and opened every bin of ingredients. The pattern was consistent: fresh on top, rot underneath. Mushy tomatoes, moldy onions, peppers with black spots. "Stop it!" Tony shouted, rushing forward. "You can't." "Can't what?" Marcus turned on him, his voice slicing through the air. "Can't inspect my own kitchen, can't protect my customers from food poisoning, can't fire the man sabotaging my brand." The word fire landed like an explosion. The room trembled. Some employees stepped back, visibly shaken. Marcus pulled out his phone without breaking eye contact. "Jorge, lock the front door. Maria, stop taking orders. No one leaves until I know everything." "You can't do that," Tony snapped. "This is the lunch rush. You'll lose thousands." "I've already lost more," Marcus said. "And if the health department shuts us down, or someone ends up in the hospital because of what you've served, we're not talking thousands anymore. We're talking lives." Marcus made the call. His voice was cold and precise. "So again, it's me, Kit. It's Jenna. Kit. We've got a problem today." "Jenna, it's me. Get to the East Side location. Bring the testing kit. We've got a problem today." Jenna Rodriguez arrived in less than 30 minutes. Her silver SUV skidded to a sharp stop outside the restaurant like a fire truck at a 5-alarm blaze. She had worked with Marcus for 6 years, helping him scale his business, but she had never arrived this fast. Her tightly tied hair was now messy from the rush, arms weighed down with 2 heavy cases of testing equipment and a tablet. "What are we dealing with?" she asked without preamble. Marcus led her into the kitchen, which now felt more like a courtroom than a place of business. Food fraud, a systematic cover-up, and I have a feeling this goes beyond just this location." What followed was a 3-hour investigation. Jenna moved like a crime scene investigator, snapping photos, collecting samples, documenting every detail. Marcus stayed close, watching as the reality began to unspool before them. Inside the walk-in refrigerator, behind the neatly arranged produce, were bins dated from 2 weeks ago. The lettuce should have been thrown out long ago. The tomatoes were limp, the onions moldy beneath their unblemished exteriors. "This isn't negligence," Jenna said as she photographed a bin of peppers that looked fresh on top but were slimy and moldy underneath. "This is intentional." Marcus clenched his fists. Someone had deliberately staged the produce like a fake painting, designed to fool inspectors. But what stunned them even more wasn't in the rotting vegetables. It came when Jenna began comparing supplier invoices with the actual stock in the kitchen. Her fingers moved rapidly over her tablet, matching delivery logs to inventory records. With each tap, her expression darkened. "Marcus, look at this," she said, turning the screen toward him. According to the invoices, they were being billed for top-tier produce, organic lettuce, premium tomatoes, 3 times a week. But the actual inventory was consistently 30 to 40% below expected levels. Marcus tried to rationalize. Maybe we're just selling more?" "No," Jenna replied, already pulling up a sales chart. "Revenue's down, not up. The shipments are coming in, but the food isn't staying." She walked silently into the back office, where security footage from the past 30 days was stored. Marcus followed, every step heavy, like descending into a basement full of ghosts he hadn't wanted to face. As Jenna fast-forwarded through the footage, Marcus's anger swelled like a rising tide. Then the evidence revealed itself, grainy, black and white, but unmistakable. Tony, late on a Tuesday night, unlocking the back door with a key he shouldn't have had. A delivery truck, not from their approved vendor, pulled into the dock. Strange men unloaded crates, then reloaded the truck with different ones. Jenna froze the frame. He's running his own network. The next scene was worse. Tony, along with 2 other employees Marcus recognized as shift managers from other locations, sorting produce in the cooler. The fresh items were kept separate. The spoiled ones, rather than being thrown out, were carefully placed beneath the fresh ones. "This isn't just about serving bad lettuce," Marcus said, his voice hollow. "They're selling the premium inventory off-site and serving customers the leftovers." Jenna nodded, tension in her voice like a drawn string. "Classic inventory laundering. They accept high-end produce from suppliers, flip it to food trucks or small restaurants, then serve expired stock to customers." The entire scheme played out in the footage. Tony orchestrating the off-hour deliveries, assistant managers helping with sorting, day supervisors turning a blind eye when inventory numbers didn't match. But the smoking gun was found in Tony's personal locker. A small black notebook. Jenna flipped through it, page by page, transactions, cash amounts, buyer names, dates. It was a complete shadow ledger, showing the operation had been active for at least 8 months. "Check this," Jenna said, scrolling through her tablet. "He was skimming about $3,000, 0 cents a month, just from this one location." But it didn't stop there. Jenna handed Marcus a list, names of other branches listed in the notebook, some with notes like active, trusted, or negotiating expansion. "It's not just store number 7, Marcus muttered, his voice dry, soul wrung out. "He's been recruiting people at other locations. At least 2 more stores, according to this," Jenna confirmed. She closed the notebook, her eyes locking with Marcus's, full of grim sympathy. "This is organized, Marcus, not just one bad employee. This is theft, disguised as cost-cutting." The moment she finished speaking, her phone buzzed. A text from a health department contact. 2 recent food poisoning complaints had been filed that week. from 2 different Delgado locations. "We need to move fast," Jenna said, already packing up the evidence. "If this spreads, you could be facing a chain weed crisis. The press won't go easy on you, and your reputation, it might not survive this." Marcus looked out the window. Tony was sitting in the dining room, seemingly calm, but his eyes were scanning, calculating an exit. No remorse, no fear, just the next strategy forming. But what hurt Marcus most wasn't the stolen produce, though the financial loss was in the tens of thousands. It wasn't even the safety violations that could land someone in the ER. It was the betrayal of everything the name Delgado was supposed to stand for. Tony had turned his grandmother's legacy into a lie wrapped in a tortilla. "Give me a full list of every location mentioned in that notebook," Marcus said, his voice now cold as steel. "Tonight, we visit them all." He turned to Jenna, his eyes unwavering. "And call our contact at the district attorney's office. Tony and his little network are about to find out what it means to steal from the wrong family." The confrontation Marcus had dreaded and long prepared for arrived at 6:47 p.m. Jenna had documented every piece of evidence. The notebook was sealed in a clear evidence bag. Marcus returned to the kitchen, where Tony now slouched by the prep counter. The arrogance was gone. Only exhaustion remained, the look of a man with no cards left to play. "We need to talk," Marcus said, pulling up a chair across from him. Jenna stood nearby, ready to record every word. Tony looked up, no regret in his eyes, only resentment. "I guess you found the evidence," he muttered. 8 months of theft, fraud, betrayal," Marcus said, voice steady. "But what I want to know is, why? You had a good job, benefit, a path to advancement. Why throw it all away?" Tony stared at him. Then, like a dam finally breaking, the truth came pouring out. "A good job," Tony laughed bitterly. "You think that pays for 2 kids in college? For a wife fighting cancer for 3 years? Your good paycheck didn't cover life, let alone a decent one." Marcus paused. A flicker of sympathy flashed across his face. But Tony wasn't finished. "You sit in your high-rise office counting profits from 12 locations, preaching family values and authentic recipes. Meanwhile, food costs are through the roof. Portion sizes keep growing, and managers are expected to hit impossible targets." His voice rose, edged with righteous fury. "You want to know the truth? Profits were shrinking because you refused to make the hard choices. I made them. I did what had to be done." "What had to be done?" Marcus shot back. "Poisoning customers, stealing from me, dragging other employees into your scam?" Tony stood abruptly, chair screeching across the tile. I helped people survive. Danny Reyes up north was about to get evicted. Carmen Silva downtown works 3 jobs to support her mother. I showed them how to keep the lights on, how to protect their families." The ease with which he named other locations made Marcus's blood run cold. This wasn't about one man or one store. It was a cancer spreading through his entire empire. "How many people, Tony?" Marcus asked, voice low. "How many have you taught this system to?" Tony remained silent, his eyes hard again. But Jenna was quicker. She pulled up the employee database and cross-checked the names Tony had just mentioned. "Danny is the assistant manager at location 3, Jenna read aloud. "Carmen works the evening shift at location 9. Both have reported unusual food cost activity over the past 6 months." "You documented everything, didn't you?" Marcus said. Not a question, but a statement. "The notebook, the contact lists, the financial records. You weren't just stealing. You were building your own empire." Tony didn't answer, but his silence was the clearest confession of all. "Who else in management is involved?" Marcus continued. You couldn't have pulled this off alone. I want every name. Tony's lips tightened. I want a lawyer. Marcus nodded. No anger, no theatrics. You'll get one. Eventually, you'll have to face this. What about Jake Morrison and Lisa Chin? Marcus asked, eyes locked on Tony. Tony flinched, just slightly. Those names had touched something raw. Jake, the assistant shift manager who had worked side by side with Tony at Location 7. Lisa, the night supervisor with full access to inventory systems and supplier schedules. Jake just needed money for a wedding, Tony replied, his voice tinged with justification. And Lisa, she was saving to buy her parents a home. They're good people, just caught in bad situations. Marcus narrowed his eyes, his voice like steel. Good people don't serve rotten lettuce to families. Good people don't steal from their own workplace. Good people don't drag others into a criminal conspiracy. Tony let out a dry, bitter laugh. Criminal conspiracy? Come on, Marcus. This isn't some spy thriller. It's the food service industry, not arms dealing or money laundering. We just managed inventory flexibly. No one died. Marcus's voice dropped low, but it cut like a knife. You served contaminated food to pregnant women, the elderly, and kids. Do you even know what salmonella does to a 2-year-old? Or how E. coli can kill someone with a compromised immune system? For the first time since the confrontation began, Tony looked shaken, but he clung to the excuses that had let him sleep at night for the past 8 months. No one got seriously hurt. There weren't that many complaints. Most customers didn't even notice. Jenna stepped forward, her voice sharp and clear. There were 2 reported food poisoning cases last week, from the stores you just implicated. One involved a pregnant woman, the other a 73-year-old man with diabetes. Tony's face went pale, but the defiance lingered. Could have been anything. Food poisoning happens all the time. Not at my restaurants, Marcus said firmly. Not until you decided to trade my family's name for a few crates of spoiled produce. Tony didn't respond. Then, as if every ounce of bitterness he carried came pouring out, he looked Marcus dead in the eye. Your family? You really think this was about legacy? Marcus, this was always about money. The only difference between you and me is that you have enough of it to pretend it doesn't matter. Marcus didn't respond right away. That line, it wasn't entirely false. He did have money, enough to weather a storm that would destroy others. But that didn't excuse what Tony had done. Maybe you're right, Marcus said quietly. Maybe I've been too far removed to see the daily struggle. But that never gave you the right to destroy what we built. And it damn sure didn't give you the right to gamble with people's lives. Tony slumped into his seat, as if the weight of his own choices had finally caught up to him. He exhaled heavily. So what happens now? Marcus glanced at Jenna, who nodded, her tablet still recording. You're suspended immediately. Charges will be filed by the end of the week, and everyone you pulled into this, they'll be held just as accountable. Tony looked down, his voice cracking. My family? My wife's in chemo. My kids start the new semester next week. Marcus stood, gaze unflinching. Then you should have thought of them before you bet their future on a bed of rotting greens. By 7:30 p.m., the East Side location looked more like a crime scene than a restaurant. Police tape stretched across the entrance. Health department officials cataloged violations. News vans circled the block like vultures. From inside, Marcus quietly watched as Tony, Jake, and Lisa were led out in handcuffs. Their faces turned away from the cameras, but the footage would be on every evening news segment by nightfall. And this was only the beginning. Ore, Maria, Marcus called the only 2 employees still there after the rest were dismissed. They walked over, cautious, unsure if they were next to be fired or arrested. You're being transferred to location 4 downtown. Same pay, same shifts, and a $500.00 bonus for your honesty today." Their faces lit up with disbelief. Jorge, who'd been trembling moments earlier, smiled for the first time all day. "Thank you, Mr. Delgado. I didn't know anything about the bad lettuce. I just did what Tony told me." "I believe you," Marcus nodded. Jenna had confirmed. Only management had access to the scheme. The rest were just following orders, unaware of the bigger picture. "And that's why I'm rewarding you, not punishing you." In the next 48 hours, Marcus and Jenna launched a full-scale strategic sweep across the entire chain. Location 3, north side of the city. 6 o'clock. IE man Danny Reyes, assistant manager, was caught red-handed, sorting produce. Fresh on top, spoiled beneath. "Danny, we need to talk," Marcus said, stepping into the walk-in cooler as Jenna recorded everything. Unlike Tony, Danny broke down instantly. He sobbed, confessing to 4 months of involvement, earning around $800.00 a month through the scheme. "I never meant to hurt anyone," Danny cried as he was handcuffed. Tony said it was just leftovers. The food was still usable. The company had more than enough. Location 9, same story. Carmen Silva, night supervisor, had used her system access to alter logs and delete evidence. The extra money helped her buy insulin for her mother. "I thought it was just a few fake reports," she whispered, tears in her eyes as Jenna photographed the doctored documents. "I didn't know someone got sick." But the biggest shock came from Location 11A branch Tony had never even mentioned. Routine inspection revealed a small group of employees had independently created their own version of the scam. "It's bigger than we thought," Jenna said, watching the site manager be taken away in cuffs. "Tony didn't just break people, he created a culture where fraud felt normal." The media frenzy was relentless, but Marcus didn't hide. He held a press conference with the health department, standing before cameras with Jenna's inspection reports in hand. He accepted full responsibility for the system failures, but emphasized these were individual crimes, not company policy. "Food safety is not up for negotiation," he declared. "Those employees betrayed not just my trust, but the trust of every family who ever believed in us. And they will be held accountable." He invested over $200,000 in the first year alone to set things right, hiring a national-level food safety director, replacing all security systems, and increasing surprise inspections from quarterly to weekly. Most importantly, he launched an employee assistance fund offering interest-free loans and emergency support. Marcus understood now. Financial pressure could push good people toward bad choices. But now, they had better options. "If anyone's struggling, come to me," Marcus told his regional managers. "I don't want our people choosing between their job and their loved ones." But the hardest part? Winning back customer trust. Sales dropped 40% in the first week after the arrests. Social media was flooded with images of moldy lettuce, conspiracy theories, and fear. But little by little, the light returned. Surprise inspections started catching minor errors before they could grow. The Employee Support Fund helped prevent 2 potential thefts, and word began to spread. The owner was back. He was eating at his own restaurants, inspecting the kitchens, talking to guests. 3 weeks later, Marcus received a very unexpected visitor. Mrs. Henderson, the elderly woman whose complaint had haunted him, knocked on his office door, holding a printed Yelp review. 5 stars, she smiled. "I went back to the East Side location yesterday. Best taco I've had in months. I thought you should know." Marcus looked at the review. "Whatever happened before, this place has returned to the quality I remember. Clearly the owner still cares about doing things right." For the first time since that awful afternoon, Marcus smiled. For real. The cleanse was working, his grandmother's legacy. might still survive. 1 month and 3 days after the scandal broke, Marcus stood in front of the East Side location at exactly 11:47 a.m., the same time he had once walked in, disguised, searching for the truth. But this time, he wasn't hiding. He wasn't sneaking in. He wasn't running. The grand reopening banner flapped proudly in the spring wind. The glass doors sparkled as they swung open. And inside there was no trace of the rot that once festered. Only a brand new chapter, cleaner, stronger, and more determined than ever. Shiny new kitchen equipment gleamed under upgraded LED lighting, reflecting a transformation that was both physical and spiritual. Security cameras were now positioned smartly, visible enough to guarantee transparency but subtle enough not to feel invasive. Most importantly, the energy in the kitchen had changed. It buzzed with purpose, with pride, with people who were working not just with their hands but with trust restored in their hearts. "We're ready for the lunch rush, Mr. Delgado," said Carmen Torres, her eyes bright with purpose. She was the new manager Marcus had personally brought in from his most successful location. Young but seasoned, and more importantly known for her unwavering integrity and professionalism, Carmen represented the future Marcus envisioned for his entire brand. Marcus nodded, silently watching the kitchen team through the open prep window. Every motion had purpose. Every ingredient was fresh, stored correctly. The lettuce was vibrant, crisp. The tomatoes were ripe, fragrant. The beef, seasoned with his grandmother's secret blend, was cooked with exact care, not a spice out of place. "I'll have one traditional beef taco," Marcus said, stepping up to the counter where Jessica, a new hire with 5 years of restaurant experience, greeted him with a warm, authentic smile. "For here or to go?" "For here," he replied. As Jessica rang him up, Marcus kept watching the rhythm of the kitchen. But unlike the last time, there was no shadow of deceit, no trace of pretense. Miguel, the new prep cook, opened a bin of lettuce and immediately reached for the top layer. No tricks, no hidden rot underneath, just pride in every move. The taco arrived minutes later. It looked just like the one that had triggered the entire nightmare. Perfectly layered, vibrant in color. But the moment Marcus took a bite, he knew everything had changed. The lettuce snapped crisply. The tomatoes burst with sweet acidity. Even the tortilla was perfectly warm and sturdy, holding its fillings like it was made with care. This was the kind of meal his grandmother would have proudly served. As Marcus ate, he watched the restaurant slowly fill. At first, customers were tentative, but trust began to trickle back. Spread through word of mouth, social media, and local news stories. Families returned. Construction workers grabbed lunch. Office staff who had once been disappointed now smiled as they picked up their orders. Then came the moment that mattered most. Marcus spotted a familiar face. A pregnant woman who had filed one of the first food poisoning complaints, one of the early victims Jenna had traced. She was cautious, her hand trembling slightly as she flipped through the menu, like someone still healing from a deep wound. When her food arrived, Marcus walked over to her table. "Excuse me," he said gently. "I'm Marcus Delgado, the owner. I believe you had a very poor experience here before, and I wanted to personally apologize." She looked up, surprised. Not because she recognized him, but because she didn't expect the owner to come to her, himself. "You're the owner? I wasn't sure I should even come back." Marcus nodded, his tone soft. "I completely understand. What happened before was unacceptable. That was my responsibility, and I failed. I'm sorry." He gestured to the taco she hadn't touched. "Would you consider giving us another chance? If you're not satisfied, your meal is on us, and I promise you, what happened before will never happen again. Not here, not at any of our locations." She took a bite, chewed slowly, thoughtfully. Then, for the first time in weeks, A genuine smile lit up her face. This is the flavor I remember. This is why I used to come here twice a week. Thank you for giving me a reason to trust again. That afternoon, Marcus gathered his entire executive team at the East Side store. At the center of the main counter, where every customer could see, he unveiled a polished steel plaque, simple but commanding. The engraved words shimmered like a vow in the sunlight. Integrity isn't in what you serve. It's in what you refuse to hide. Promise from the Delgado family? This plaque will be displayed in every location, Marcus announced. It's not just a slogan, it's a promise. To our customers, our communities, and to the memory of a woman who taught me that reputation isn't something you inherit, it's something you earn. One meal at a time. News outlets that had once covered the scandal showed up for the unveiling, but this time the headlines weren't about ethical collapse or conspiracy exposed. They read, "Restaurant chain rises from ashes with integrity and truth." 6 weeks later, Marcus received the call he had both anticipated and dreaded. Tony's trial had concluded. The verdict, guilty on all counts: food fraud, theft, criminal conspiracy, and endangerment of public health. The sentence, 18 months in prison, 5 years probation, and full financial restitution. Jenna on the phone said, "The judge said something powerful. He praised how you handled the crisis, said he wished more business owners had the courage to step up and take responsibility the way you did." Marcus set down the phone, eyes drifting across his office. On the walls hung framed photos, one for each of the 12 locations. Each now bore the Integrity Pledge plaque. Each had implemented the new protocols. Each served meals that honored his family's legacy. The East Side store hadn't just recovered, it had become the highest performing location in the chain. Sales were up 15% compared to before the scandal. Customer satisfaction hit an all-time high. But more important than any number, Marcus had learned something no business school could teach. Integrity isn't doing the right thing when it's easy. It's standing up when everything falls apart. It's being willing to own your mistakes, learn, and rebuild. His grandmother's true legacy wasn't just a secret recipe or fresh ingredients. It was a promise that when someone entrusts you with their family's meal, you protect that trust with everything you have. No lies, no cover-ups, no rot hidden beneath a perfect surface. And now Marcus understood. That promise was worth more than all 12 restaurants combined. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Moments of Quiet Truth, where we believe that the human spirit is never truly defeated, only waiting to rise.